What's up guys, Seb here, and today I am going to talk about a video game that has eaten up all of my free time. And that's right, I'm going to be talking about The Division. So here's how my review is going to be broken down. Basically, this is all my opinion. I am not a game journalist. I have never worked in the game industry. I'm just a passionate gamer and nerd, and basically I just want to kind of give that kind of perspective on what The Division is like, and if it's a good game, if it's a bad game, if it's a game you should rent and not buy, or etc. etc. So first we're going to start with the story. Now the story is that you are a member of this sleeper organization. Shut up, traffic outside. Sorry. So basically you are a member of a sleeper organization called the Division, and you are called in when there is a crisis that the government cannot really handle. And that crisis is that smallpox, a mutated version of smallpox, has been released into the public in New York City on Black Friday. And how that worked was that somebody mutated the smallpox virus, put it in money, and basically allowed that money to circulate on Black Friday, which I personally think is a really cool idea. I think it's actually quite possible. I hope it doesn't give any crazy people ideas on what they should do, but at the same time, being in New York City and seeing what Black Friday is like, I think that it's actually a pretty grounded, realistic idea. Now that's basically the story. Like, that's the story. So the story is way more environmental than it is sort of linear. You're gonna get some tidbits. You're gonna talk to people. And they're going to give more and more of the story. You're going to find these little tidbits, these echoes, which are sort of like digital recreations of events that happened in specific parts of the city during the Black Friday incident and afterwards. So those shed light on the story. You're going to find phone recordings of various factions and people in the city of what's going on. You're going to find aerial shots from drones. These are all collectibles. They're not they're not things that you have to you have to collect. They do give you experience every single time you find them. So I mean, if I kind of went through the whole beginning few sections of the game and found everything, and I kind of quickly out-leveled the enemies. But we'll get that when I start talking about that kind of stuff. So there's a story, but it's way more environmental. You're definitely going to find way more story beats in missions when you're like, let's say there's a mission where you're trying to find when you're trying to find the head of your tech section in your operations base, and it's basically a subway station that they've turned into a morgue, and there's going to be a point where like you're going to be walking in and you're going to turn on the lights and you're just going to see caskets and dead bodies, and like that's kind of when you kind of get hit, like, oh my god, this really happened, like a bunch of people fucking died, like it's serious. Like the immersion, especially at an environmental level, is really, really good. I've lived in New York City for a few years. I live in Upper East Side. I go to the Midtown all the time, which is where this beginning section of the Division takes place. You start on the west side, and you work your way to the east side, and then the dark zone's right in the middle. And so I could actually kind of walk around and know exactly where I was. I didn't need necessarily the map to be like, oh, okay, I need to go to West 34th Street and do this mission. I kind of could actually just wander and knew exactly where I was, which is really, really, really freaking cool. So yeah, that's basically the story elements. You're not going to get a lot of story elements. This is definitely way more of an emergent story game, similar to, I would maybe even say, Metal Gear Solid 5, where the actual story of the game wasn't really important. It was actually your own story on what you faced on missions and stuff like that. It's very similar to that. You're going to be doing missions, you're going to be getting lots of story beats in those missions, but as you wander around and explore the world, you're also going to find little tidbits. But the story is not the big part. And if you're not from New York City, maybe the story might be less enticing for you because you're not going to recognize every street and cranny and go, oh my God, that's the Starbucks on my block. Holy shit! Like no, you're not. So maybe I might be a little too fanatical because I live in New York City, and I accept that. So take my opinion with a little bit of grain of salt. This is kind of close to me. I've lived in New York all my life, not New York City, but I lived in upstate New York. I've lived here for a number of years in New York City, so it's close to my heart in that sense. It's my home. So I felt way more attached story-wise, environmental-wise to this game than I have any other time. Now we get into the really fun part of the Division, and that's the combat. Now, combat in the Division, it is a third-person cover shooter. So, think Gears of War if you want to think of the style of combat that you're going to be facing. You're going to be, getting into cover, popping out, shooting some guys, getting into cover, popping out, shooting some guys, using a skill and taking out guys that way. That's basically combat in the Division at its basic level. Now, what makes it more interesting are the RPG elements that Ubisoft has thrown in, such as the skills, which are going to be the little turret that you can put on top of your cover or next to you or whatever, and he's going to lock onto the closest bad guy and shoot at him and distract him or suppress him, which is another thing I can get into. Like the different combat gets really deep the higher, like when you start realizing the nuances. I'll explain some of them, the longer this section of the review goes. Or then you have talents, which you can have. You have, I think you have 3 talents, and they're sort of like little things that you can select. You have you get 6 per section of your operation base. So you have security, which are more like tanky sort of builds and abilities. Then you have medical, which is of course is more healing. You're going to get the first aid upgrades and stuff like that. And then you have tech, which is more DPS oriented. That's where you're going to get your sticky mines, your seeker mines, and your turret and stuff like that. So depending on how many of the upgrades in those sections you've gotten will determine how many of these talents that you can get. And they're going to vary from, you're going to have increased explosive damage, or you're going to like one of them that I have is where in your cover to cover movement, depending on how many meters you've crossed getting from cover to cover, there's a 2% increase for every meter of damage that you'll cause. So those are like the talents, and you can switch them and change everything. You can switch and change on the fly, which I think is great. So like if I'm playing solo, I tend to be more DPS, so I have a turret and I have like a seeker mine. And if I'm playing with my brother or some friends, then I pick either like more of a tanky character or a medic, depending on what is needed in that situation. But yeah, you change them on the fly. It's not the menus. I personally find are really easy to navigate. It's really easy to select stuff. So you can, in about 30 seconds or less, you're going to have a completely different skill set than you did before, which I think is great. And then you also have perks. Now, perks, again, are similar to talents in the sense you unlock them depending on how you upgrade your different sections of your operation base. And those are passive. So once you have them, you have them. And those are going to be things like, you've increased the amount of medkits you can carry, you increased the amount of grenades you have, you increased the amount of damage resistance by wearing this type of armor or getting into the cover and staying in cover this long. They're going to be passive. So those you don't need to change, those you unlock all the time. Now there's different things in the combat itself that you're going to notice. As I said before, like if you put out the turret's going to lock onto a guy, and he could either damage him if he's out in the open, or if he's in cover, he's going to suppress the enemy. Now if the enemy's suppressed, that's when he's not going to stick out and shoot because the turret constantly shoots at him. So he's going to be stuck in that cover, and that's when you kind of do a flanking maneuver, and you go around, and you actually, depending on if you have this talent or not, you can cause more damage when you're flanking an enemy than if you're facing them head on. So, for a DPS build, having the turret and being able to flank is a big boost in your damage output. So that's kind of what the combat is like in a very simple sense. I suggest playing it because if you haven't played the Division, it's kind of hard to explain, like get into the nuances, because it's things that you learn as you play. You're gonna learn that like I said, like when I play solo, I'm way more of a DPS build because I can have the turret distract one guy and throw a seeker mine to another guy, and that's two guys taken care of, and then I can pop out and take out the third or fourth guy by myself. If you're in a group, you don't necessarily need the added distractions of those two talents, so you might have the smart cover, which allows you to do various different things. You can bolster the cover you're in. You can cause it so that way it heals you. That's another thing I actually completely forgot to talk about. When you unlock certain upgrades within your operation base, you also unlock these mods. I say mods. For your skills. So like if for me, I use for my turret, because I use the turret all the time. I have it so that way when it shoots enemies, they pulse, and that means that they show up on, and people around them show up on the map or in my thing, so I know where they're hiding, if they're hiding, and stuff like that. And then the seeker mine, I have one where it actually splits into multiple different seeker mines and goes after everybody in a group. So those are what the mods are like, and those again you change on the fly depending on what situation you're in, which I think is really cool. This is compared to a lot of like RPG elements, I feel like it's really, really easy to like just change the way you play. Like, I think it's really smooth. Some people might argue against it, but again, these are my reviews, and it's completely my opinion. I'm not going to give this game a score at the end. I'm actually just going to probably talk about if you should play it or not. That's going to be basically it. I'm not going to give any score because I think they're contrite. But anyways, so that's combat. I'm getting way ahead of myself. I'm too excited for this game with this game. So yeah, that's basically the combat. And then now we're gonna go into sort of that's NPC combat, and I haven't even gotten into like the multiplayer like Dark Zone combat that you could actually get into. So that's actually going to be the next section that I'm going to talk about more of the multiplayer elements, the MMO elements of this game. Because I've talked a little bit about the RPG elements are mainly combat related, except for the appearance, which I actually enjoy a lot. I like. There's going to be these NPCs who come up, like regular citizens who come up, and they're going to ask you for help. They're going to ask for like a bottle of water. They're going to ask for like candy or something like that. And if you give it to them, they're going to give you clothes. Now, clothes doesn't affect anything. It's completely cosmetic. And I have to admit that every single time I go out and I do a mission and I come back, I always change my appearance just because it's kind of like a nice way to like decompress when after like doing like 3-4 missions or something like that. And you come out and you feel new. You feel like you've actually. It gives me the same feeling as getting new loot because it pops with the same bright colors and everything like that. So I feel good getting it, and I don't feel like it's a waste of time because I honestly, the food that you get, like the energy bars, the water, all that stuff, gives you certain perks, and unless you're like fighting a named boss, I don't really use them. So I always have excess amounts, so I always give them out to the citizens. So I always have a lot of this close stuff, and I mix and match, and I find it a lot of fun. But that's me. You might not find it. You might find it boring, and you might never want to do it, and that's perfectly okay. We each play the Division our own way, which is, I think, a great thing. We each play it our own way. You have different builds, you have different layouts, and that's how it works. That's why I think this is a good game. Now we're going to talk about multiplayer. Now, as I said in the beginning, the Division is a third-person cover shooter with MMO and RPG elements. Now, the MMO elements is that you're going to have these hub stations, which are safe houses, and the main hub station is on the west side near the Hudson. It's one of the first places you go after leaving a small section in Brooklyn, which is like the beginning of the story where you learn about who the Division is and what's going on. And so those are basically main hub worlds, and that's where you can do the matchmaking and stuff like that for missions in the open world. Your operation base is completely your own. If you walk in a party, the party's gonna slowly disappear from view. They're not gonna mess with they're not gonna mess with what you're doing or anything like that, or how you've upgraded your base. The operation bases are completely individual, but the safe houses and the one hub space are communal, so you're going to bump into players there. And I have to say, I played the Division Alpha, Beta, and the final release, and I have to say that the matchmaking has gotten exponentially better from all of them. I mean, it was pretty terrible in the alpha. A lot of people were kind of being dicks about it, especially like the Dark Zone, and then the beta was kind of the same thing. And now in the final release, people seem to be friendlier. I don't know if that's because the majority of people in the world are friendlier or what, but I'm definitely having an easier time meeting people who don't want to kill me in the Dark Zone, getting matched with good people who do the mission and actually don't want to just do the mission and that's it. They actually hang with you for a while and you guys create a group. That actually happened to me in the Dark Zone one time. I'll tell that story when we start talking about the Dark Zone. So yeah, that's kind of like those little hub worlds. Other than that, you're not really, unless they're in a group, you're not going to bump into other players except for in those sort of hub sections. Now, the sort of multiplayer section, like the major multiplayer section, is the Dark Zone. Now, the Dark Zone is basically a free-for-all hub world in the game. And it's right smack in the middle of the map. I mean, you'll see it. If you open the map, it's this big red square. And that is the multiplayer dungeon raid area. And that's like the best MMO term I could probably give it. It is like a dungeon area. You're going to do runs, and you're going to fight bosses, and you're going to get the best loot, and so on and so forth. Now that's now to the story that I was going to tell you is that I ventured, unless I'm like playing with my brother or some friends, I tend to venture alone, and I tend not to play with strangers very often. But I wandered into the Dark Zone, and there was this guy who was in trouble, and me being the nice guy that I am, decided to come up and start helping him. So I started helping him fight off these named boss characters and stuff like that. And the thing with the Dark Zone is that an agent can turn and shoot another agent and become rogue and take all their stuff. So let's say I had a bunch of gear. If he saw that I had a bunch of gear and was just like, fuck it.
Fuck it.
He could have turned and shot me and killed me and taken all my stuff. And he could have extracted it and so on and so forth. But that didn't happen. It happened to me all the time in the beta and in the alpha, but it didn't happen to me in the final game, which I'm super happy about. Instead, him and I teamed up. We found another guy who was in a similar situation where he needed help, and we helped him, and he teamed up with us. And then we found another dude who was, again, in a similar situation, and we all teamed up. And then we had a full squad of 4, and we just basically roamed the Dark Zone for a good hour and a half, just kicking people's asses all the time. And it was awesome. And actually, that's been my experience most of the time in the Dark Zone. I've bumped into a couple people who don't give a shit and just will run up, and you could just walk into the Dark Zone, not even have loot, and I've been popped. And that's super frustrating. But the idea of the Dark Zone is actually a lot of fun. And I don't like multiplayer shooters that much. I'm not very good. I don't have the Twitch skills to be really good in Halo or Call of Duty and those things. But for some reason, the stories that people can come up with in the Dark Zone are like really good. Like you've gathered a bunch of loot, you're getting ready to extract, and all of a sudden all these bad NPCs like named bosses and stuff come out of nowhere, and you're fighting them off, and then all of a sudden a second squad shows up, and they're like, okay, we'll help you out if we can use your extraction point at the same time. And we're like, oh, okay, sure, fine. And we all like team up. It's like 2 squads, and we're just like shooting down all these bad guys. And at the end, it's all good, and we all just like get rid of our loot and we pass ways. That's fucking fantastic. And then there's other times, like I said, you just walk into the Dark Zone, you look around going, I'll go here, and then out of nowhere somebody comes up and just snipes you in the head, and you're just like, it looks like I'm going to enter from a different section and try not to get killed. But ultimately, I have to say the Dark Zone is a lot of fun. And actually, I think they just released a patch yesterday, I believe. And supposedly it makes it better to go rogue, which I'm kind of sad about. I haven't gone to the Division since the patch has come out yet. And so I haven't gone into the Dark Zone. I don't know what the perks are yet. But I'm kind of scared. In all honesty, like I don't want to go in there and get like shot and all my shit stolen. But whatever, I have a squad. That's how it goes. So yeah, that's the Dark Zone. That's the multiplayer element. That's the MMO element of the game. And I'm trying to think, is there anything else that needs to be discussed that's major? Nah. Well, loot is a big thing. Okay, so loot again. Another MMO like element is that you have grays, greens, blues, purples, and golds. And so basically that's the level of gear. So gray is the common, like you're gonna find that on everything. It's not good gear, it's just gear. You're gonna have green, which is good, which is gonna be above gray, and will usually have higher perks, higher damage, and stuff like that. And then you're gonna have superior, which is the blue, and those will usually have a talent added to them. So like a talent would be like, for example, if you get somebody with a headshot, you have a 50% chance of not wasting that bullet. You know, something like that. Or if you has a chance of setting people on fire. There is incendiary ammo. I've never used it. There's also explosive ammo, but it's not the way you think about it. It's not like a cartridge of explosive ammo that you shoot and shit blows up. No, it's like a cooldown item thing. I haven't used those. So that's going to be blue. They're superior, and then there's purple, which are specialized or specialty, and those are going to have 2 of those talents. And then there's going to be high end, which is gold, and those can have 2 to 3 talents. My hands. That's going to have 2 to 3 talents, depending. And then there's also named high-end gear, which is going to be like the highest level stuff. So you'll find either like a black market AK-47, or you're going to find a named AK-47. The named AK-47 is obviously going to be better than even the high-end regular AK-47. So that's the loot. The loot is really good. Loot drops a lot. Once you get, like in the beginning of the game, once you start getting greens on a regular basis, that's when loot starts dropping all the time. Like good loot. Like now, if I find a higher level enemy, like doesn't even have to be named or anything. 90% of the time, they drop blue or higher, and if they are named, they drop purple or higher. And it's fairly easy to find these guys. Usually, they're in these stronghold areas that respawn every day. And so basically, you can kind of farm them that way if you want. So loot's really good. You also get armor. You get a chest. You get the chest piece. You get gloves, boots, pants. No, pants is closed. You get gloves, boots, chest, like body armor, backpack, and pistol holster. And those, of course, are the same thing: the gray, green, blue, purple, yellow, or gold. And so it's the same. It's a similar thing, and you can add mods to those, which gives you similar. Those will give you sort of extra boosts. So like you can have a mod that I have all the time because I use the turret all the time. I have a mod that increases my turret damage or my turret duration. You can also add mods to your weapons, which are more like sort of the customizable parts. You can add like a silencer or a muzzle. You can add an extended mag. You can add laser sights or a scope. Those things, and they were all changed the way your weapons work and how they function. And again, that's where the combat gets deep because you stop. I'm gonna turn off my phone. Because that's when the combat gets really deep, because when you get to the higher level, that's how you max everything, is by going like, okay, if I put this on this thing, then it's going to work out. And if you take this away and I add it to this instead, well, how's that? What if I change this armor? Does that improve my DPS or what? So that's when it starts getting deep, and that's actually where I am right now. I'm trying to like find all the good gold gear that I can find, and play the dark zone. Okay, something that Ubisoft has already kind of mentioned to everybody, there's going to be free and paid DLC for The Division. There's going to be one coming out in the summer of this year. There's going to be one coming out in the fall and one coming out in the winter, I think. And they're going to add various things. I'm really curious to see if they add like the other boroughs, because you start out in a small section of Brooklyn and then head to Manhattan, which is where the main focus of the game is. So I would love to go back to Brooklyn. I would love to go to the Bronx. I would love to go to different parts of Manhattan, especially since like a faction in the Division is the Rikers, and they're prisoners who have escaped from Rikers Island, and that's up towards the Bronx. So seeing the path of destruction that these prisoners wrought in their escape from the Bronx to Manhattan would be kind of cool. I think that would be kind of a cool little story. What else? End level stuff. I just hit end level, like end game stuff now, and basically that's you get daily missions, which will give you better weapons, armor, and lots of credits. and those are daily. I think you get 3 a day, and it's basically a mission, and you do them in 3. It's the same mission, but you do them in 3 different difficulty tiers. The first difficulty tier, if you're good, you can solo it by yourself without a problem. The second and third are really, really hard, and you kind of have to group up. These are like the really high end enemies. They're gonna have armor bars that are like this freaking long, and they're not gonna go down unless you've like coordinated a good strike force. And all right, I think that's about it. I think that covers most of the game, at least in my opinion. I personally really like, in final thoughts, I personally really like the game. As I said in the beginning of the video, it's eaten up almost all of my free time. I personally think it's better than Destiny. I liked Destiny in the beginning, but it suffered a lot from lack of content. I don't believe that the Division suffers from the same thing. I feel that there's a lot to do. I feel like it's easier to party up with strangers than it is in Destiny. I feel that it's more fun. I like the setting again because it's New York City and I live in New York City. It's definitely much closer to home for me, so I like it way more than outer space, even though I love outer space. I love outer space. I would actually, if I could go to outer space on vacation, I would go to outer space on vacation. But for some reason, the Division has sunk its hooks into me so deeply that nothing so far has been able to take it out of me. I mean, if all I could do was play the Division, I'd be actually really happy. So on that case, I think it's a great game. I can't wait to see how they expand it. I hope they expand into different boroughs of New York City. I hope they expand the story. I hope they go into more specific situations that happen in New York City. Can't wait. I don't like. So the DLC has been kind of explained, but it's not in. That's, I think, the free DLC. The paid DLC, I have no idea what it is. Hopefully it's not just cosmetic stuff and weapons. Hopefully it's actually good story beats. I'm not against DLC as long as they do it right. I personally think The Witcher 3 did DLC the best way. Give small things as free, and then if the expansion packs and stuff like that are paid. I think that's perfect. I think that's the perfect situation for DLC, in my opinion. But yeah, so like I said, I really, really like the Division. It's eaten up all. It's got its hooks in me. And actually, I'm probably going to go play it after I upload this video some more. And if you guys are interested in playing with me, I have it on Xbox One, which is why I haven't done any gameplay yet. I'm hoping to get sort of a little recorder for my consoles, so that way I can record them and also do Let's Plays on that, because I have games on my consoles that I don't have on PC, and of course games on my PC I don't have on my console. But all my recording is done on my PC, so all my PC games are being recorded, not on my console games. So hopefully when that happens, I can start recording some end game stuff of the Division. But if you guys have the Division on Xbox One, my gamer tag is Seabass6978. That is SEABASS6978. Please send me a friend request. I'd be happy to add you guys. I'd be happy to play with you guys if you guys are interested. Also, please like, comment, and share, and subscribe to this video. This is my first. That's a lie. This is my second review, but this is my first solo review. Again, I say review in quotes. I shouldn't call them reviews because these are actually just my opinions. They're not actual reviews. What I say has no consequence. It's just an opinion. If you guys like my opinion, awesome. I hope you agree with me. If you don't, please let me know why in the comments. I would love to hear your opinions on why you think the Division sucks. And if you love it, I want to hear that too in the comments. I want to hear you sing the Division's praises. Is it the best game I've ever played? No. Is it an awesome game? Yes. Is it going to be an even better game when Ubisoft has a chance to build it out even more? Yes. Is it content lacking? Not in my opinion. I've played it for weeks and I've just gotten, I should say days, because I have a job, so I play whenever I have free time. So it came out at the beginning of the month. I just hit level 30 now in the story mode. So in a matter of, let's say weeks, days, whatever. I played it for a long time, and I've just gotten to the end of the story. So I honestly think I put in a good amount of time. I'm happy with it. I don't think it's lacking content. I don't think it's really, I don't really think there's really anything it's lacking, in my opinion. I don't think it's a perfect game. There's definitely hitches, there's glitches, there's whenever you're throwing people into a hub world, they're gonna find ways to fuck with other players. Like I know in the beginning, people were like doing jumping jacks in freaking doorways and like blocking people from entering or exiting, and that was fucked up. But you know, at the same time, shit like that happens in WoW and Guild Wars and all that stuff. That's just part of people interacting with people, sadly. But yeah, I really enjoyed the game. I hope you guys enjoyed the game. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and please sub to my channel. It helps a lot. I hope you guys have watched the new segment that I created called My Girlfriend's a Noob, where basically I have asked my lovely girlfriend to play video games, and she doesn't play video games. She hates video games. She personally thinks they're a big waste of time, but she's being a sweetheart and actually supporting me on this. So yeah, go check it out. She plays Jump Jet Rex. I'll add a link in the description or an annotation somewhere, probably on my face if I can, to that video. Please check it out. I also play Jump Jet Rex, so that way you can tell the difference between a noob and a pro. Well, shouldn't call myself pro. And a gamer. And then we're also going to be doing a co-op review of that game and what we thought, and if it's a good game to play, you know, to show to your friends if they don't play video games, or your girlfriend or your boyfriend if they don't play video games. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Division. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks. Bye.